Psalms 22, verses 1 through 11. It says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me? And from the words of my groan, oh my God, I cry in the daytime, but you do not hear. And in the night season, and I'm not silent. But you are holy, enthroned in the praise of Israel. Our fathers trusted in you. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried to you and you were delivered. They were delivered. They trusted in you and were not ashamed. But I am a worm, no man, a reproach of men, and despised by the people. All those who see me ridicule me. They shout out the lips. They shake their heads, saying, he trusted in the Lord. Let him rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. But you are he who took me out of the womb. You made me trust while on my mother's breast. I was cast upon you from birth, from my mother's womb. You have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help me. Amen. But what I'll say to you today is I want to use as a subject, if you're writing, who do you trust when it appears all hope is gone? Who do you trust when it appears that all hope is gone? What is trust, Ben? What is trust? Trust is to trust something or somebody. And to trust something or somebody, you believe in that something or somebody. When you trust something or somebody, you depend on that something or somebody. When you trust something or somebody, you entrust that this somebody or this something will be able to do something for you. Oh yeah, when you trust them, you have hope in that something. When you trust them, you have faith in that something. But the problem I see with trusting things, that things eventually get old. Yeah, things get old and things stop looking like they used to look. Things get old and they stop working like they used to work. I know you've had some new gadgets and about time the new gadget loses newness, a new gadget is already out, and so the new gadget is not new and you want another one. I know you can't trust in things because things don't make you feel like they used to feel once they get old. And so things can't really be trusted. But then I understand too that you really can't trust people. Yeah, I know you can't put your trust in people because oftentimes you need people to be faithful, but they're more likely going to be fickle. I know that you can't trust people because sometimes you need people to be honest, and they oftentimes are dishonest. I know you can't trust people because you need people to be loyal, but more than likely they're going to be disloyal. I know that you cannot trust people because you need people to be strong, and oftentimes they're weak. And so you really can't trust things. You really can't trust people. And I know that sometimes you trust people and people will take advantage of you, and so you know you really can't trust them. And I know that sometimes you trust people and they take your kindness for your weakness, but what they don't realize that it takes more strength. It takes more strength to be kind than to be mean. It takes more strength to give than to take, but they don't realize it, and I know it's hard. I know it's hard to trust people because oftentimes you know that they don't mean you any good. I know it's hard because you know that they're trying their best to in your trust, but I know that you can't trust people because oftentimes they're just trying to use you. And I understand how hard it is to trust. But there is some danger in not trusting. Because if you don't trust somebody, it becomes very difficult to formulate meaningful relationships. See, that's the danger when you really don't trust nobody. Because then, if you don't trust nobody, who do you have to confide in when you want to talk to somebody? See, I understand. We all need somebody to trust. And I understand that it's hard to trust because people have so many agendas. Oh yeah. They start off one way, but they may end up another way. And so the big question on the floor today is, who do you trust? And I hope we clear that question up today. But the Bible teaches us a couple of things about trust. It says in Psalms 33 and 21, it says, God's name and God's word is worthy of our trust. Proverbs 3 and 5 says, trust in the Lord with all of thy heart. Lean not into thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And so the Bible says that we have somebody we can trust. And the person that we can trust is God. Now I like to say this. I talk about this trust thing, and I have to confess something to you. Most of my life, I didn't trust nobody. Most of my life, I didn't trust a soul. The only people I trusted was the people in my house. That was my mothers and my sisters. Anybody else, I had no trust in them. Because I understood from a very early age that people can do some mean things. And this is a personal thing, but when you're real quiet, don't have much to say, people don't quite understand. They think that's weak. And so they'll try to do a whole lot of stuff. And so, in my life, I didn't really trust them. But God helped me with that. Amen. Yeah. He helped me with that. Yeah. And I tell people this all the time. I don't necessarily have to trust people, but I trust God to protect me from the people. That's it right there. See, I don't necessarily every time trust the people. But what I do trust is that God will protect me no matter what they're up to, no matter what they got on their mind, no matter what scheme they got working. I believe because God is God and I belong to him, he's going to protect me. And I'm saying that for me, but it goes for you. You can understand it doesn't matter what people are up to. Because if God has you covered, and you got your hand in his hand, and you got your life in his hand. See, that's the beauty of surrendering your life to him. You don't have to be scared that somebody's going to do something to you. And that means, though, that they're not going to try. Hear me now. That means that they won't try. It just means that God's going to protect you. And so you can trust God. And as we look at this text, in Psalms 22, 1 through 11, as we look at this text, the psalmist here appears to be losing hope in God. Right off the bat, he starts asking the why question. He says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why have you turned away from me completely? Why are you so far from saving me? Why are you so far from the words of my groaning? He's asking why. Because he's losing faith in the God that he knows. He says, Lord, I'm crying out by day, but you don't answer. I'm crying out by night, Lord, but you don't answer. And I believe some of us can relate to the And in fact, there can be a time that you cried all night and then cried all day. And those are times that you're wondering, who in the world can I talk to about this? Oh, I know those are tough times. I can't tell them because if I tell them, they're going to put my business in the street, so I can't talk to them. I can't call her because if I call her, she's going to say all I do is complain. And so then you have to say to yourself, who then can I trust? During those times when the bills are due and all the money is gone. Times when you were sick and you were wondering if you could ever get well. Times when no matter how much you tried to teach your children, to help your children, it looks like you can do nothing to get them to act right. Those are tough times. Times when someone you love is suffering, and they're suffering, and there's nothing that you can do to help them. Those are tough times. Times when you're searching for a yes answer, but all you get is no. Those are tough times. In times like these, you find yourself asking God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far away from me? Why don't you hear me crying, Lord? Why? These times are times when you feel like all hope is gone. And so then the question remains, who do you trust? Who do you trust when you get more questions than answers? Who do you trust? Who do you trust when all your hope is gone and every time you call on God you don't hear nothing? Who do you trust? I submit to you today that you can trust God. And the psalmist laid it out right here real good. I'm going to give you 4 points and I'm going to sit down. 4 things. 4 reasons that the psalmist laid out that we can trust God. And the first one is because God is holy. Here it is. The psalmist is speaking of the godliness of God. In other words, when he says, God, you're holy, he's speaking to the godliness of God. He's saying, you are God. I can trust you because you're God. You're God. You're God. You're God all by yourself. You're God. You're God. You're Alpha and Omega. You're the beginning and the end. You're God. I can trust you because you're God. I can trust you because you are Elohim. You're God. I can trust you because you're El Shaddai. You're God Almighty. You're God. I can trust you, God. The psalmist says, I can trust you because there's nobody like you. I can trust you because nobody's stronger than you. I can trust you because there's nobody higher than you. I can trust you because you are God. You can trust God because he is God. And there's no other God like him. And so, when you're wondering who you can trust, when all your hope is gone, the first thing you understand then, you can trust God because God is holy. But then I saw something else. The psalmist sort of clued us in on this, but he says, you can trust God because your ancestors trusted God. Right there in the text, the psalmist says fathers. And what he was referring to is that he was referring to the fathers of our faith, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so he was letting us know that we can trust God because those who came before us trusted God. Okay, I know somebody here has a mother who trusted God. Somebody here probably who has a father who trusted God. Somebody has a grandmother and a grandfather who probably trusted God. And because they were able to trust God, they set the stage for us to realize that we can trust this God. Yeah, there were some other folks that I was thinking about them. When I thought about our ancestors who trusted God, some of us have some ancestors who came over on the ship, and they had to trust God. There were some who worked in the field and they had to trust God. There were some who worked in the house, and they had to trust God. There were some who worked in the mills, and they had to trust God. There was some who worked in the factories, and they had to trust God. They had to trust God, and they trusted God, and God delivered them. He provided for them. He protected them. He set them free. We can trust God because our ancestors trusted God. This holy God, the one who helped them make it over, that God. We can trust that God. And the third thing, as I look at this text, I understand now, the psalmist says now, you can trust God. Because He hears your cry. Although you couldn't call nobody in the midnight hour, God heard your cry. Although you couldn't call nobody at noonday, God heard your cry. Although you couldn't call nobody in the evening time, God heard your cry. When everybody else stopped listening, God heard your cry. When your best friend turned their back on you, God heard your cry. And so the Bible says in verse 5 that they cried to Him and they were saved. They trusted Him and they were not ashamed. And so what that says to me then, you got to do two things if you want God to hear you. The first, you got to cry, and then you got to trust. Or I don't need to cry and cry and cry and cry, and you're not going to trust. Because all that becomes is a hopeless cry. But if you cry to God and trust God and believe God hears your cry, He, the text says, will not let you be ashamed. You see, sometimes the enemy wants you to be sad. So he can say, I thought you said you believe in this God you serve. See, look at you. But the thing about it is, the text says, you cry to Him, He saves you, but He saves you based on you trusting Him. So it's twofold. If you just cry. It's sort of like, you know, I never seen somebody who always complaining. They're always complaining. They're always moaning. They're always groaning. They're always complaining. But you say you're complaining, but what you doing about it? Well, the text says if you're crying, what you need to do about it is trust. Don't cry to God if you're not going to believe He hears you. If you're not going to believe He's going to deliver you. What you become then is just a crybaby. He don't want no crybabies. He wants the believers. It's the believers who believe Him are the ones that are going to be delivered. And my last point, and I'm almost done. You can trust God because you have some history with God. If you look at verse 9 and 10, the psalmist started reminding God of their history. He says, now, God, you brought us out, you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust you. When I was a baby, sucking on my mama's breast, you made me trust you. From birth, God, I trusted you. We have some history. Now look, God, he just started having, sometimes, y'all, let me tell you something. Sometimes you just got to have one-on-one with God. Just a real conversation. It don't have to be fancy. You don't have to use no big words. You just talk to Him. The psalmist just started talking to Him. So look, now, right from the beginning, you were with me. Right from the beginning, you made me trust you. But look, God, He tells me I'm in trouble. It's right there in the text, I'm in trouble. God, I'm in trouble. Don't be so far away from me. I'm in trouble. Please come help me. And the thing is, and the reason he can do that, say this now, because him and God have some history. And so since they have some history, they can have an authentic conversation. This is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about you and God and the history that y'all have. The times when he answered your prayers, the times when he came and you didn't know what was going to happen, the times that you were suffering and all of a sudden you found relief. That's history. That's God. And the history that you have with God gives you assurance that you can trust him. Yes. Listen. When you get in your car, because every day you sit in it, it cranks. If you got it, everything right, batteries, all that stuff right. Every time you put the key in there, boom, boom. But if one day you get in your car and you turn the key and it doesn't crank, you don't just give up on your car, do you? You're going to try to figure out how you're going to get it cranked back out. You may need a battery. Some people may need some gas. But there's something that you're going to do because you're so used to God, your car starting. And so what am I saying? You can trust God because every time you've ever gone to him, he's helped you eventually. Yes. It may not be, as they say, it may not come when you want it, but it's always on time. So you can trust him. And so the psalmist here was really going through some tough times, because if you look at verse 6 and 7, he started saying, I'm a worm. I'm not even a man. I'm scorned by man. I'm despised by people. He says, everybody's looking at me. Everybody's mocking me. Everybody's insulting me. Everybody's shaking their head when they see me. He said, now, God, I'm having a hard time here. I need you. But I noticed something in this text that really wasn't part of what I wanted to talk about, but I saw something. In verse 8, I noticed that even the psalmist's enemies knew that he could trust God. Because it's right there. He says, his enemies, because they were mocking him, they said, but he trusted God, let God deliver him. He trusted God because God delighted in him. And you know, I thought about that as it relates to us. Sometimes your enemy is trying to get you. But part of the reason they're trying to get you because they know your history. They understand your history. They understand that you're blessed. Because there's a couple things they said here. His enemy said, let God help him. Sometimes your enemy trying to say, I wonder is he going to be able to get out of this one. I wonder is this God he's going to church for every Sunday going to be able to rescue him this time. But what they do know is that he has before. And one thing he says here, it says, God delights in him. Yes. Understand what that means. What they're really saying is, God favors him. And sometimes, brothers and sisters, the enemy attacks because he knows that God favors you. Let me tell you something. Sometimes, you know, have you ever wondered, what did I do to them? Why they hating on me? Why they treat me like this? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever had a situation like, oh, you know them? What they hating on me for? But let me tell you something. They can see the favor of God on you. And so, it doesn't matter how much they attack you. It's important that I want y'all to get this, what I'm telling you. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't done anything to anybody. You haven't, as I say, hated on anybody. But what ends up happening is that they see God's favor on your life. Sometimes you can't see it. It's something about favor. Tastes good, right? We only eat things that taste good. And so people only attack things that God puts favor on. That wasn't my message, but I just thought about it. His enemy said God delights in him. That's favor. And in that favor, that's why sometimes you must understand. Remember earlier I said, I don't think people are not going to attack me, but what I do believe that God is going to protect me. What I'm saying to you, because of the favor on your life, and your enemy sees it, doesn't mean that they're not going to attack you, but what you got to do is trust God to protect you. God delights in you. And your haters know it. They know it. And look, you can't hide. Favor can't be hidden. It's just like a beautiful plate of food. When you see it, it looks so good. And then you smell it, and it smells so good. And the next thing you're going to think, this is going to taste so good. But that's what happens when your enemies see you. And the favor of God is on you. He says, whew, I know something great will happen with that person. They head somewhere. And so what I'm trying to say, and even though I threw this in here, you got to understand, you got to trust God no matter what. And the thing about trusting God, you know, sometimes we have to be like Job. He said, though they slay me, I will trust him. And sometimes we have to be like the songwriter. It says, I will trust in the Lord until I die. And sometimes, brothers and sisters, we just got to trust God. We got to trust him when we're on the hill. We got to trust him when we're in the valley. We got to trust him when we're up. We got to trust him when we're down. We got to trust him when we're level to the ground. We got to trust God. We got to trust God because this is the same holy God that your ancestors trusted. It's the same God that wiped the tears from your eyes after you cried all night. It's the same God. It's the same God who healed your body the last time you were sick. It's the same God. It's the same God who made a way out of no way when you didn't know which way to go. It's the same God. It's the same God who promised, I will never leave you or forsake you. It's the same God. You can trust God. You can trust God because he's so holy. You can trust him because those who came before you trusted him. You can trust this God. I don't care how long you cry, you still can trust him because he hears your cry. And if you're confused and wondering if you can trust him, think back. When you trusted him before, he delivered. Oh, maybe he didn't come, let's say, when you wanted, but he was showing up on time. Doesn't matter how long you have to wait. Doesn't matter how long you have to cry. Don't matter how long you have to be by yourself. You can trust God to come and deliver you. When all hope is gone. When you're down to your last. Believe that God is going to come and answer your prayer. Don't you quit believing. Don't you quit trusting. Don't you quit knowing that God is going to come can't lose our belief in God. We got to trust him no matter what happens, no matter how long it happens, no matter how many times it happens. We got to trust that God is going to deliver us. If we don't believe it, who do we expect to believe? Brothers and sisters, you can't trust God. You can trust him. You can trust him with your life because he is your life. He gives you life. He's the one who wakes you up in the morning. Who can trust somebody who gives you breath? He breathes